We stood huddled together in the flickering fluorescent light of the rest stop, our breaths visible in the frigid night air. The hum of the vending machines was the only sound, a deceptive normalcy in the midst of chaos. I gripped the tire iron tighter, my knuckles white, and glanced around at the ragtag group of strangers who were now my only allies. The door rattled violently as the gang outside tried to break in. Their grotesque masks and twisted laughter were the stuff of nightmares, but this was real. Too real. It had all started innocently enough. I was driving back from a conference, late at night, when my car started sputtering and eventually died. The gas gauge had betrayed me, and I found myself stranded on a desolate stretch of highway. I spotted a sign for a rest stop a few miles up and decided to make the trek on foot, hoping to find some help or at least a phone to call a tow truck. As I approached the rest stop, I saw a few other cars parked haphazardly, indicating that I wasn't alone. I felt a slight sense of relief, which quickly dissipated when I noticed the eerie stillness. Inside the small building, a couple of vending machines hummed, and a flickering light cast long, ominous shadows. "Hey, are you okay?" A voice called out. I turned to see a woman, about my age, with a look of concern on her face. She introduced herself as Sarah and explained that her car had also broken down. Before long, a few more people joined us: Mark, a burly truck driver, Lisa, a nervous college student, and an elderly couple, John and Edith. We exchanged our stories, finding a common thread of mechanical failures and dead phones. Something wasn't right, but we tried to stay calm and figure out our next steps. Mark suggested that we stay put until morning, but as the hours dragged on, an uneasy feeling settled over us. It was around midnight when we first heard the noises. At first, it was just the rustling of leaves, then the crunch of gravel underfoot. The atmosphere grew tense, and we peered out the grimy windows, seeing nothing but darkness. Suddenly, the power went out, plunging us into pitch blackness. "What the hell was that?" Lisa whispered, her voice trembling. "Everyone stay calm," Mark ordered, though his voice was strained. We fumbled for our phones, using the weak flashlight apps to illuminate the room. That's when we saw them, figures emerging from the shadows, grotesque masks obscuring their faces, weapons glinting in the faint light. They moved with a sinister purpose, surrounding the building and blocking all exits. Panic set in. We barricaded the doors and windows as best as we could, but the gang was relentless. They banged on the doors, their taunts and maniacal laughter seeping through the cracks. come out, wherever you are," one of them sang, the melody twisted and chilling. The next few hours were a blur of fear and desperation. We tried to call for help, but our phones were dead, and the payphone outside had been smashed. We were on our own. "They're toying with us," John muttered, his face pale. "Like a cat with a mouse." "We need a plan," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the terror in her eyes. "We can't just sit here and wait for them to break in." Mark nodded. "We have to fight back. Use whatever we can find as weapons. And if we're lucky, maybe we can slip past them and get to safety." We scoured the rest stop for anything that could be used to defend ourselves: tire irons, a broken broom handle, shards of glass from a shattered mirror. Armed with makeshift weapons, we prepared for the inevitable confrontation. The gang's attempts to breach our defenses grew more aggressive. They smashed windows, reaching into unlocked doors, and we fought them off with everything we had. The air was thick with tension and the scent of fear. In the chaos, Edith was grabbed through a broken window. John lunged to save her, but he was overpowered, dragged outside to join her screams. The rest of us were frozen, our horror paralyzing us for a moment before the survival instinct kicked back in. "We have to move, now," Sarah urged, her eyes wide with determination. "We can't stay here." We devised a risky plan: create a diversion to lure the gang to one side of the building while the rest of us made a break for the woods behind the rest stop. Mark volunteered to be the bait, his truck driver strength and courage shining through. "Go!" he shouted as he hurled a trash can through a window on the far side of the building. The gang rushed towards the noise, giving us a brief window to escape. We sprinted towards the back door, adrenaline pumping, hearts pounding. We burst into the cold night, the treeline beckoning like a promise of safety. But the gang wasn't fooled for long. Shouts and footsteps echoed behind us as they gave chase. We ran through the dense woods, branches whipping at our faces, lungs burning with exertion. One by one, we stumbled and fell, the gang closing in. It was clear they enjoyed the hunt, their laughter ringing in the night. Just as my strength was about to give out, Sarah grabbed my hand, pulling me up. "We can't stop now," she panted. "We have to keep moving." Ahead, we spotted a clearing with a small, dilapidated cabin. It wasn't much, but it was a chance. We made a final, desperate sprint, crashing through the door and barricading it behind us. The cabin was dark and musty, but it was shelter. The gang surrounded the cabin, their taunts growing louder. "You can't hide forever," one of them sneered. "We'll get you." Inside, we prepared for a last stand, knowing that our odds were slim. The fear was overwhelming, but in that moment, we found a grim determination. We would fight to the end, together. The gang's assault was relentless. They battered the door, shattered the windows, their masked faces leering through the gaps. We fought back with everything we had, the nightmarish scenario pushing us to our limits. As the first light of dawn broke through the trees, the gang suddenly retreated, melting back into the shadows as if they were never there. Exhausted and battered, we stared at each other in disbelief. We had survived the night, but the terror of the last exit would haunt us forever.